Welcome to everybody to the first episode of our Unfiltered Women in Recruitment podcast. For those of you that were around last year, we hosted our first event in this space. It was designed, or we started it to create a space in which all the women in recruitment, no matter how junior to how senior, can come together to share real talk, real issues, provide real mentorship with the hope to keep women in the industry for longer. And that's exactly what we're hoping that this podcast could be. So with me today on our first episode is Lynne Beggs from 27.2 Consulting. For any of you that did happen to come to the event last year, Lynne is my leadership coach and mentor, and she came along to the event last year to support me. And we actually had a really positive response from having you in the audience. The feedback from having you there was really strong. Everyone was very keen to hear more from you and get more advice. So it was only natural for you to then be the first person on our podcast. So welcome. What we'd love to do to start is just hear a little bit about your story, and then we're going to go into some real harsh topics.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a real honour to be the first guest. It's taken us a while, hasn't it, to get here, but we're here now. So, as you said, I've been in the recruitment industry now for coming up 28 years, which is terrifying. So worked in the industry myself from a consultant all the way up to a managing director in my time in the industry. And about 6 years ago, I decided to get out of recruitment and set up my own consulting practice. So as you said, I'm now a leadership coach, but I predominantly coach back into the industry and really, seeing that leadership within the whole industry needs a lot of support and a lot of help and doesn't always get it. And I would like to be able to, I suppose, give back what I learned and the experiences I had in order to better the industry. Coaching lots of women, lots of men, across many, many different industries in recruitment and all around the world. So the joy now of working online is that you can coach people anywhere. So from Sydney to LA and everything in between, I coach and consult back into the industry, which I'm very passionate about.
And very well, can I say. I think we've been working together now for 18 months, maybe.
Yeah, coming up 2 years, I think,
And although, like you said, you do mentor both male and female leaders in the industry, I think the reason that I have gained so much from you is because I can relate to you, because you are a female leader in the industry and you have, from what I know, seen it all, and anything I ever bring to you, there is always
a story
or a great bit of advice to come from it. So really pleased to have you on board. And I know from the many hours that we've spoken in the past, you always tell the truth and you always say it how it is. You don't hold your punches, and it has really helped me to better myself in a leadership position. So I'm really excited about what we're about to discuss on this. One thing I'd like to start with is leaning into the fact that obviously you've been doing this for quite a while. As you said, you have seen it all. You've done nearly 28 years in the industry, and 22 of those with a very, very well-known brand. Can we say Hayes?
Oh, of course we can. Yeah, of course
we
can.
So 22 years at Hayes, which, has been all different types of recruitment company over the years, and you yourself has worked in loads of different roles there, so you have seen it all.
Yeah.
One thing I want to start with is, what do you think that we are still getting wrong when it comes to women in recruitment?
Gosh, it's such a big topic, isn't it? We could be here all day. Yeah, as you said, I was with Hayes for such a long time and saw so many different things within that business. And I started in the UK back in the 90s, which was a whole different thing. And I think, as I said at that night when we were all together, that was back at the stage that women, didn't wear trousers to work. And, there was a dress code on what tights you had to wear. And hideous.
How high your heels were.
Honestly,
I had that when I started in
absolutely.
a
Hideous. But right through all the different things, I went out to Australia with Hayes, which was incredible, and spent 15 years out there, and then also worked in Asia with Hayes as well. So, amazing times, and delighted to have been able to do all of that with them. The thing that I still think is really sad is that whilst the industry has got more balanced, I suppose, in how many women are in it, it still doesn't seem that they're progressing anywhere. And, I myself got to managing director level, but, above me, the board was 90% male, and the only female that was above me was in HR.
Yeah.
Still to this day, Hayes haven't ever had a female CEO. And none of the big players do, you know, and that kind of sets the tone for the industry, unfortunately. So women do incredibly well in recruitment, and they're so needed in recruitment, but something seems to go wrong at a point, and they opt out, they don't get the roles, they get overlooked. And I hate to say it, and I'm not saying this is in every case, but as you said, I say the truth.
Yeah.
A lot of very average men get really big roles. And, you know, I suppose from the outside and the inside, I sort of have a perspective that I can see incredibly talented females getting overlooked and getting bypassed by not so talented men. And, you know, I know that's not just recruitment, but it is happening in our industry a lot.
I think even from us working together, like where I am at the moment in my kind of director role and where I want to go, we battle every day in our conversations, like whenever we speak, around my confidence and like whether I even feel like I'm right for that role, whether I'm ever going to get to that place. And what you're great at is helping me to figure out how to do that and do that well. But do you feel maybe that is one of the reasons maybe why we never get to that next step?
Yeah,
I think based in confidence.
I think it's definitely one of the reasons, you know, and as you know, when people say the words I hate, imposter syndrome, the reframing of imposter syndrome into imposter moments, which, you know, because I coach men and women, everyone has it. Men have equally as much imposter moments as women do. But I think women take it to heart more. I think they really question their confidence, whereas more men just get on with it and just do it. But I think as we've talked about this before, you know, I think often at that level, when you get to a board level, senior leadership level, you can be the only female voice in the room. And that's challenging for any woman. It doesn't matter how confident you are, how tough you are. If you're the only one saying something different to everyone else, it's very easy to get talked down. And it's very easy to back away because sometimes it's a battle just too hard. So I think that's a big part of it.
And like the battle that is faced to be acknowledged because you're that single voice, it then becomes, I think, like you said there, it just becomes, is it worth the fight? Yeah. And I think a lot of women might just have to go, maybe it isn't. Maybe it will be better placed elsewhere.
But I think, you know, if you turn up to a board meeting month after month after month and you get talked down every single time, you know, as human beings, we give up. You know, eventually you just go, well, what's the point? No one's listening to me anyway, you know. And I've seen that myself. I've seen it happen to friends of mine in the industry. You know, a very good friend of mine has just left the industry after over 30 years being at very senior leadership level for exactly that reason, because she went into board meetings with different opinions, and instead of that being welcomed, it was turned away. And she was like, what's the point? You know, where am I going with this? So nothing's changing. Why should I stick around?
Because at the moment the percentages have massively weighted against us.
Shocking.
Bad. I think off the back of that, with the only voice in the room, and we have spoken about this as well, is that women are often, you know, the way we deliver when we want to get across and something we're passionate about and an idea that we have, you know, we are deemed as more, say, emotionally outward in the way we think and we speak. I think personally that's a good benefit, and I wouldn't want to change that. But I do find that's a problem because, like you said, you've got groupthink with male board members. Although they might have different strategic ideas, the way they deliver that is very of a similar way. Whereas when we come in, we might deliver it more on a slightly more openly emotional way, which can then be knocked down as well. How do you think that we can maybe overcome that in those meetings, or how do we change that perception in those meetings?
It's really hard in business, isn't it? You know, especially in recruitment, because recruitment is a people-centric business. You know, not many recruitment companies own anything other than their people, you know. So to me, it's never wrong leading with the people first bit, you know, and the people thinking, and how do we do things better for our people, and what are we doing to develop our people? Whereas, you know, and I'm not saying it's always, because we can't talk in broad terms like that, but often men will come in a very black and white thinking, you know, it's right or it's wrong. Whereas I think women see all the shades of grey within that. The problem I have is that you know, when it gets especially to the senior level, all we look at is the facts, the numbers, the outputs, the end of it, without the story in behind it. And I think that's what a lot of women bring. I'm not saying, again, all women do, but a lot of women do. And, I certainly know from my own experience, bringing a very different level of emotional intelligence to the room. I have the ability, and I think a lot of women do, to read a room. You walk in and you can go, okay, I know what's going on around here. And not as many men can do that, and they admit that more often now than they used to. But I think that balance of, we need to look at facts and figures, and we need to look at the people, or we need to think about how that's impacting people. A decision we're going to make, who's it going to impact? What's it going to be? Can we mitigate that in some way? What's the right message? I always try and say to leaders, when you're trying to either change something or get a message out there, you've got to take people on the journey with you. You've got to tell them the story. Mm-hmm. Just because you've got to the end of the line, they're only at the beginning. So you've got to go back and take them on that story with you. Mm-hmm. And I do think women are better at that, to be honest, because I think they have more empathy and understanding for the impact it makes. It doesn't mean the results aren't any different, because the results shouldn't be any different. But how you get people there.
And the journey is, and understanding that the journey is different for every single person you take on it, so you have to adjust it for the person to get them there. Yeah.
Totally different. But learning to tell that story, recruitment is notorious for just telling people to do things. Yeah. Pick up the phone, call more clients, send more CVs. But where's the why? Yeah. Why are we doing those things? Why is it important? What's it going to change? If you go and meet a client instead of just calling a client, what difference does that make? Yeah. And I think we've missed that. I think we've missed that big why. And I do think women are better at that.
Yeah. And we in the kind of coaching that you give me, because I will like very happily admit that I'm probably too far the other way. I find that I'm probably too into the people, too into the like emotionally driving them, emotionally motivating them, which does hinder me sometimes. But I think that's a great way of leading. So falling back on the fact that if we had more of a equal split at board level, where we have equal amount those that are focused on the data and the numbers, and equal amount those that are very good at emotionally driving the people and getting the best out of the people as people, think how much further a company could go. Think how much your attrition would drop, and your retention would drop, and keeping actual females into the industry as well, because they will then respond better to not just the data and numbers, they'll respond better to the emotional side of it as well.
Because you get that balance, and again, that doesn't matter what industry it is, but if you've got the diversity at board level, you've got equal voices in there, you come up with a much richer decision in the end that people can use. And it has to be balanced with, obviously we've got to drive the numbers, obviously we've got to drive the figures and the revenues, that's business. But, there's a balance of where it is, and the decisions being people-led decisions that are the right thing for the business and the people. If you want your people to stick around, if you don't, and you want to lose all your people and you're quite happy to have high attrition rates, keep driving just the numbers, But there's a bit of balance in there.
Okay, perfect. So we know that to happen. We can say that we know having that diverse thinking, having more women at board level, we really know that it can make a difference from what we see already, or what we believe anyway. So why do we think it isn't happening, and how can we change that?
Gosh,
sorry, that's a really big question.
And it's one that hasn't changed over the years since I've been in the industry. It's got better. Back in the 90s, there was no way there was female at senior leadership levels, and I don't think from my own experience at Hayes, there's never been a female CEO, and there certainly wasn't back then. But it's definitely got more balance. I think the most recent statistics is that 54% of recruitment consultants in the industry are female. So we're going in at the bottom,
that is way higher than I would have said.
Really?
I would have, from just exploring in my network, I would have said that it was much more heavily stacked towards male consultants.
And I think in your sector it is. And this is across the whole industry. Yeah. So I think in your sector it is, but it's different in some sectors. Yeah. I see, because I coach leaders and I coach very senior leaders, most of my clients are male, and I thought initially, was I pitching it wrong? What was I doing? But it's just a fact of where it is, because at the minute, women that get into the industry, and we're saying, it's better than it was, but still less than 5% of CEOs in the recruitment industry are female. Less than 5%. and I'm not even convinced it's that high.
Yeah.
I would think it's even lower than that. There's no one that springs to my head that I think, oh yeah, that's an amazing female leader. There has been over the years. I just can't think of one currently that I think of. And again, still typical across a lot of industries, but there is something going wrong at a point. Women get to senior leadership and then either opt out, they get overlooked, they don't get the big job, something goes wrong at that point. And maybe it's because people don't want the more people-led emotional thing. I don't know, and I'm not saying female CEOs are emotional at all, because they're not, but something changes at that point.
Yeah. Well, I think it's even in my, if it relates to my journey and the work that you do with me, going probably back to something we said at the beginning, is that, on the outward to my team, I am their leader. But when I sit with you, we talk through all the things that I find hard. And the reality is that probably most times we sit down, there is a part of my conversation which is like, this is very hard. Like, this is a really tough job to do. And I really want to do it because I love this industry and I know I have all the skills. But it is tough because I struggle with the confidence.
Yep.
I struggle with thinking that everyone will always be looking at me differently because maybe I'm a woman or they see me as emotional. Or even though that might not be the case, I internally think that all the time. So there is so much probably about leadership that women aren't aware of before they go into it, and we're often probably scooted into the roles of management and people management more than our male counterparts because of our emotional intelligence. But we are probably not given the foresight of what that comes with and the brutal truth of maybe being that and being the only female one in your company. There's so much about it that is hard. I mean, what do you find are some of like the real brutal hardships of being leadership that maybe those going into it aren't aware of when they go into it and even struggle with when they're in it?
I can recall when I first became a managing director, and it's something I'd really strive for throughout my career, that's where I was going. Desperately wanted this. And when I got it, a very, very wise person said to me when I was struggling in exactly those things that you just talked about, the confidence, being in bigger rooms with bigger people who were all men. And I honestly didn't like what I saw. I got into these rooms and I was quite shocked at behaviour and attitudes and thinking. And he said to me, you've fought for so long to get up through the trapdoor, and now you've got through to the other side. You don't like the view, but you can't go back again. And that's always stuck with me. I mean, that's 10 years ago somebody said that to me, and it's stuck with me ever since. When you get into a leadership role, male or female, I think it becomes quite lonely. I think you're really fortunate.
Amen.
I think you're really fortunate that Signify, hire someone like me to support you, that you've got someone to talk to and someone to bring all these thoughts to. Majority of the industry doesn't get that, and they don't have anyone, so it is very lonely at the top, and people don't, I think, realize that. I think they go in thinking, I'm going to be the same person, I'm going to do the same thing. But when you get in there and you've got to make decisions, and you've got to make sometimes pretty hard decisions, that can be very, very isolating and very lonely, especially when you've got a group of people looking at you going, really? Is that the right decision? And you have to justify it and stick to it. So you do start to doubt yourself. You do start to have those inner demons saying, I don't think so, this isn't going to work. So confidence does come into play, and you're not alone in that. That's a really, really common thing. But I also, in balance, see that in men and women. I think any sort of leadership role is lonely, and no one tells anyone that. Everyone sells the benefits. You're going to be amazing, and you're so good with people, and you can drive this business, and look what you've done with your desk. People forget to tell you that, you're going to have to fire people. You're going to have to train people that don't want to be trained. You're going to have to make some really tough client calls, and those decisions weigh heavy. And I don't think anyone realises how heavy, but until you get into it.
I know. And I think even with a strong SLT in place, so a strong leadership team that you are a part of, although you are a part of a team that is in it together, it is still even isolating them for individuals because you are all responsible for slightly different decisions.
Absolutely.
And although you can lean on each other, the whole point of having a senior leadership team is that everyone takes on a slightly different responsibility. So even with those around you, it can be isolating.
Very.
And I've learned, like you said, we are very fortunate here that we have you and that you work with our senior leadership team. And I think there are so many of the decisions that I've had to make as a leader that would have really, I think, broken me down mentally if I didn't have you to bounce off. And that mentorship and coaching, I think people can sometimes, especially in this day and age where there is, everyone's a coach, everyone's got a mentor, everyone's journaling, everyone's talking about everything. I think the strength and the power of having a strong mentor, a strong coach that has walked in your shoes, knows where you're coming from, and in my case, it's such a benefit that you are from a female leadership as well. Like, I believe there's such a strength in and power in mentorship, and that is who you are. So with that in mind, like understanding all the mentorship and coaching stuff that we see going on at the moment, what is the greatest impact that you have witnessed yourself being a female mentor or coach to female leaders in the industry?
And just what you just said there, I think one of the points of difference for me is that I'm primarily a coach. I'm trained as a coach. But I think because of my background in the industry, it kind of makes me a bit different. And, I haven't coached anyone yet that I haven't done what they've done or walked in their shoes or understand where they're coming from on things. So whilst I will lead with coaching, I obviously then also have a bit of support in there of I've been there, I've done it. I can, if you want, I can offer you support in that area and we can brainstorm ideas. And when you're bringing thoughts to me of decisions you're having to make or strategies you're having to bring into the team or whatever, we can really debate those and I can really challenge your thinking to make sure that you're feeling really robust around what that decision is. You've thought about it from every angle, you've looked at it from every lens, you've really considered things, and I think that makes it different. But I would also say as well, one of the bits of feedback I always get is that not all men, but the right men really value having a female as well, because there is not as many female leaders in the industry as we would like. There are too many recruitment agencies that are solely led by men. There's not a female to be seen. And often quite a lot of my clients say, I really value a different opinion. I really value you helping me see this from a different angle, So, I see the benefits to both male and females. But I think, as we discovered that night back in October at the event, so many people in the room were saying, we don't have any females that we aspire to be. We don't see them, and that saying of what you can't see, you can't be, So there was too many people in that room that night, which made me quite sad that they didn't have people in their industry, in their business, in their organizations that they were going, that's who I want to be. And I suppose for me, I always had that. I always had strong females above me, pushing me, helping me, supporting me, or me knowing where I was going and I want to be them. But unfortunately that's not the case across the industry, which I think is sad.
And it is like from the event that you said, like everyone was saying that they didn't know or have that around. Like, I am very fortunate that we have you, and you are years and years of experience, and like you said, because you've been in the industry, your coaching and your mentorship is very relatable for those that potentially aren't going to be able to have access to somebody like you. That is why we're building this community, this Unfiltered community, so that even if someone is of the same level of experience of you, or even if they're just a couple years more senior than you in the industry, just anyone that is in the same industry that is a female and has gone through similar experiences, you can lean on them for mentorship. Because mentorship is about sharing stories, sharing ideas, bouncing off each other and going back to feel confident that you are not alone in something.
So having each other's backs. Just knowing that somebody is there. The number of people that say to me they go into meetings or they go into sessions with their CEO and they can feel like I'm on their shoulder going, go on, say it. You can say it. A mentor that is somebody that works in your business or another business who just has your back and is saying you're doing the right thing, be strong, go and do it, is incredible. It's so powerful to have that. And as I said, I was really lucky to have had that throughout my career. I can talk about many women that mentored me and supported me over the years. But we all need to find that person, and as you said, this community hopefully will be able to help some people find that.
So, we've spoken a lot about leaning into kind of what it's like to be a woman in recruitment and some of the hardships there. But I think what I'd really love to get for you, because you have so much experience and knowledge around leadership and just leadership in general, and a lot of what the message we want to get across is that there shouldn't be a difference. Although there are some things that we should see just as leadership. So one of the things I want to run by you is like, what do you think some of the most brutal truths are about leadership in recruitment?
Such a big topic, and something I probably talk about every day, to be honest. And I think the tough thing for me is that it's no different than it was 20 years ago. The brutal truths that are still present in the industry haven't been fixed, haven't been changed. I think partly because I see the industry from a slightly different angle nowadays, but I still find it very sad that there is not enough development of leaders within the industry. There's a very, very small percentage of leaders in any recruitment business that get either training or mentoring or coaching to help them be better leaders. They get lots of sales training, they get lots of consulting training, how to do the job, how to make money. But the second they step into a management role or a leadership role, for most companies, because it is cost prohibitive for them, it just stops. And so then we get leaders just following how they've been led, which is probably followed from what they've been led, and no one's been trained in anything in between. Somewhere along the line, somebody might have been quite good with people, but most often they're not. And they just end up driving process. They drive, send more CVs, meet more clients, fill more jobs. And we then miss the whole people development, the culture development, the morale development, the aspirational bit of leadership, all get missed. And, it's, again, because I coach people all around the world, it's not like any country's got it fixed, because they haven't. That's something that I see that I find really sad still, that is leaders are not trained. They are in lots of other industries. They're certainly not in our industry.
Even the bit that you said there about, you have really good sales consultants, they become top billers, they've got all the training in sales. And even then, also them being, they might be really good with people, which is what you said, they might be able to use someone that's really good with people. Even putting those two together doesn't make a leader.
No.
And I would say that that's probably who I was, or slightly still am, when I first came to you, is that I'm very self-aware, and I know that I am very good with numbers and I've got really good sales background, and I know that I'm really good with people. Put them together doesn't necessarily make a good leader. No. So what is that bit in between? Like, what is it that needs to happen?
The secret sauce. Yeah. I think, where I see the recruitment companies that get it right, they are more often than not, they will start looking from the beginning, the recruitment bit of bringing people into your organization. Do you just want salespeople? Do you want people that can do sales and lead people? Do you just want people leaders? And I think some agencies get it really right, that they do look for, there's more people-led people that in the future they could become something. But also I think, I'm very passionate in believing that most top billers, not all, but most top billers should stay as top billers. Give them bigger roles, give them more responsibility, give them bigger clients, whatever needs to happen to keep developing them. But that's their skill set, Go and look at other people in your organization to become the people leaders, to become what is different, because it's a whole different mindset. It's a whole different skill. And you've got to come at it from a different angle about, how do I motivate these people? They're all great salespeople, but how do I motivate them? What are they thinking? One of the things I always say to leaders is, do you really, truly understand what motivates each of your people? And honestly, 9 times out of 10, they don't, because they all go, they just want money. And I'm like, they don't. Go and ask the question, because they don't. And I had a leader recently, and I said, please, before our next session, he had 6 people in his team. And I said, go and ask that question and ask them, what else? What else? And he came back absolutely stunned, and he goes, oh my God, I knew nothing. He said, they told me X, Y, and Z. They told me A, B, and C. He said, it's nothing to do with money. I went, I know. So, it does require a whole different way of thinking. And I think, I understand in some agencies you can't have a different pile of top billers and different pile of leaders. It's not always possible. But if it is, try and think of the people. Who are the people that when you're in the office, then everyone naturally turns to ask the question? Yeah. That's your leader, not the top biller, because the top biller's often the person no one talks to, So yeah, I think people viewing it differently, but also then thinking about, before they put them into the role, what do they need to learn? How many leaders get years into their job and they still don't know how to do a proper one-to-one with somebody? Yeah. They don't know people's motivations. They don't know people's careers, aspirations. That should be like, what's the basic toolkit we give everyone in their first few months,
Because that leads back to something you said earlier about leaders often just push a process because they've come from being a biller.
Yep.
They go into leadership and all they know is the processes they've done to then push those same processes.
Yeah.
How did I do it? Let me rinse and repeat with my team.
Yeah.
But you've hit the nail on the head there, is that going into leadership, that we need to learn a whole new skill set. You might naturally lead, you might naturally hold a room, but just like bringing in a consultant into your team, if they aren't shown how your processes work or even down to how your system works, they might be the best biller, but that's going to hold them back. Same with being a leader. If they don't know how to have a one-to-one or they don't know how to read people's motivation, that is going to hinder them further down the line, no matter how good their processes are.
Always hold them back.
Yeah.
And it's that whole thing, when I said before about, making sure everyone understands the why. We all know as a consultant, somebody just tells you to do stuff and you do it and it works and you make money and you're really successful. But when you become a leader, you've got to shift from telling to asking. And asking them if you want a team of people that are going to be accountable, they're going to step up and do their own thing, you're going to make your life easier in the long run, you've got to start asking them. They are intelligent adults. Ask them what they're going to do, why they're going to do it, how they're going to do it, what support they need. Yeah. But it's on them, just telling people to do a process all the time will work in the short term. It will not work in the long term. And so it's shifting those things. And again, I don't blame people, because there is this just follow what I knew, that's how I was managed. It worked, so I'll do it with everyone else. It will work with some people, it won't work with all. And you've got to think differently.
Yeah. And the telling everyone, that is easy. That's an easy route out.
Yeah.
But the understanding each individual, the managing them, each person individually, the motivations, driving that.
Yeah.
That is a huge undertaking. That's a huge job. So that is also, another brutal truth, shall we say, about becoming a leader, is that it is a much bigger job. It's a much bigger responsibility to manage all of that.
I can still remember, back in the day, billing and managing, and knowing that my billing role started when everyone else went home, because my day job had been the people, and then I started doing my client work at probably 5:30, 6 o'clock at night. Back in the days when we stayed in the offices till 9 o'clock, whatever.
But you worked till 6 o'clock. That doesn't happen anymore.
6 o'clock. But that was the truth, because you did it. It was a very hard balancing act. Yeah. But it is, it is a totally different mindset, and it is challenging to start with. Once you get into the flow of it, it works. And you get people that are more self-sufficient, you get people that are more accountable, you get people that stick around because they also enjoy being there, because they're not just being told what to do all the time, So it is throughout your whole organisation trying to change that culture a bit so that people do stand on their own 2 feet, It's not the old school, someone stands at the top and just shouts at everyone and tells them what to do, because it's not what people want anymore.
No, and they won't stick around for that anymore.
They won't stick around.
Very different environment.
Yeah.
What else do you think is, or when we talk about, we spoke about like the brutal truths, obviously we've led into a few. There are so many.
So many.
What else do you think is worth, I really want to dive into this, because if we're going to be driving and supporting and hopefully influencing more women to stay and go through it, the more information they have, the better.
Totally.
So what else is out there? What else is tripping people up once they fall into those roles?
I think what's really hard when you get into any sort of management or leadership role is the toleration of toxic behaviour. And, again, sweeping statement that I'm about to make here, but it often is the top performers get away with really toxic behaviour in the organisation because their numbers are high, and it's been excused for years, and it's been let to go because they're, they bring in so much, so they behave badly and no one calls them out on it. And that you know, as a human being, I find that very challenging to deal with. This isn't a great statistic to have, but twice I've got rid of $1 million billers because of their toxic culture. One of them was becoming quite dangerous for women to be around.
Yeah.
And, you know, I knew it was the right decision that he couldn't be in the business, even though he brought in huge revenue.
Yeah.
And my CEO thought I was absolutely crazy, but it wasn't. Women were complaining and it was getting dangerous. So I removed him. And someone else who again, I wouldn't have said he was that toxic, but he didn't bring the right behaviours and cultures to the team. So I've always held really firm on those sorts of things because I don't like working with toxic people. I don't think they are right. And the toleration of them just destroys the culture underneath. And it starts to say, it's okay around here to be like that. It's okay not to do what the company needs you to do. It's okay to say bad things. It's okay to ignore everyone or shout at people. I just don't think that's acceptable. But unfortunately, you know, it was in the industry when I joined 28 years ago. It's still in the industry today, but it doesn't have to be. You know, I had a great, incredible director that I worked with. And I remember him saying to me, I was quite a new manager, and he said to me, just so that you know, I'm not going to do anything you ever tell me. I won't join in any sales mornings. I won't do any things that you're talking about. He said, but you and I are going to be the only two that will ever know that. He said, to everyone else, it will appear like I'm doing all those things. I will back you. I will vocally support you. But you just need to know I'm not going to be doing it. But he was my biggest supporter, my biggest fan. And everyone just assumed that he did the things and he built huge numbers. And again, he's someone I've never forgotten because of the support I got from him and the honesty I got from him. He, you know, he could have gone and been toxic. He chose not to be, you know. But we've all seen it. We've seen how it impacts everyone. We've had the impact ourselves of those people. But yeah, you know, our industry unfortunately tolerates them because they make money. And
I think that the sad truth is that I don't think that will change in many cases.
No.
I think
it's working out as a leader how you minimise the impact. You know, if the decision of the business is not to exit people like that or to change their behaviour, it's how do you minimise the impact? You know, and it when it starts to impact everyone else or it starts to impact your business being able to grow, you've got to do something. But you know, you've got to minimise it.
I think the way that I personally would and you know, hopefully I'd never have to do that here, but if I did, the way that I would see to combat that is that the only way you can do it without being confrontational to whoever that person is, no matter how much they bill, is to just keep the same standards for everyone, no matter what, because then it doesn't have to be an argument or a disciplinary. It's just that it's the same standard for everyone. If you start that from the beginning and always do that, then it's not having to pull back on anyone or change or it's not having to go and fix something that's always broken. Just stick to the same rules for everyone.
As a leader, you know, going in and starting off as you continue, you know, and that whole thing of high standards, you know, the industry has high expectations of people. It is really hard work. People do work really hard in this industry. We can't say they don't because they do. But you as a leader holding high standards on everything and not dipping them, because the second you dip them for one person, you open the floodgates. And it is everything from, you know, timekeeping to client work to behaviors to, you know, attitude. It's all those things. You've got to hold what you set out to be as your standards and not dip below them. And it doesn't make you, you know, I think so many people, especially women, think that makes us tough or hard or harsh. And it doesn't. You can still be a nice person. You can still be great fun. But, you know, there's a line and everyone knows the line and you don't go below it. And if you keep that high, you're right. The rest of it will kind of slowly disappear.
We had, it actually came from one of my consultants not that long ago. He put it in a really good phrasing, as saying that the behaviour of those toxic people it then becomes disrespectful to the rest of the team. You as your leader are then disrespecting the rest of your team because they are following line and they're following suit. So then you're then losing a level of respect.
And it's in a perverse way, favoritism in the wrong way. You know, if you let them get away with it, you're making a separate rule for them as opposed to everyone else, which again, if you're trying to build a really good culture, it doesn't work.
No.
You can't play favorites. There can't be one rule for someone and a different rule for others. There can be different levels of flexibility. There can be, different levels of trust because of how long you've known people, but standards and behaviors and attitudes and expectations should be high. Yeah.
No, I fully agree. And I think that's probably from what I hear speaking to when I'm interviewing anyone whenever I interview from anyone from other companies, usually always the conversation as to why they're considering leaving is due to toxic behaviour in the company they're in. It is usually, the kind of people that we look to hire is always kind of those of a senior level and with senior experience, which means if they have that, they are, they have a good background. So then to leave, it is only down to that. So you as a company are putting at risk losing some of your other top performers. Yep. They might not be your top billers, but a company doesn't survive with just top billers. It survives with every kind of biller that you need in the company. So you are then putting those at risk as well, because those are the ones that are interviewing. Those are the ones that are considering speaking to another company because of the toxic behaviour by employees.
But think about the message that they're getting. Leadership is saying it's okay to be toxic around here. If I don't want to be part of a toxic environment, but all I see is leadership saying, that's okay.
Yeah.
Well, of course you're going to leave. Of course you're not going to want to be part of it. And then you're right. I mean, how sad that you're going to lose really good performers, really loyal members of staff, because the leadership team won't take action on that or minimise the behaviour in whatever way. If people don't see things getting addressed for a long period of time, and it takes people a long period of time, doesn't it, to want to shift, they will leave. And, our industry has high enough turnover as it is without causing yourself more problems. There's not loads and loads of brilliant people out there that companies want to hire. So you want to retain the right people, don't you?
Yeah. Don't risk it. So nip it in the bud early.
Nip it in the bud
and
early.
Keep the standards the same across everybody, no matter who they are. We have covered off some really good topics. I've really enjoyed talking to you, and I really appreciate your candour and your honesty and being able to share so many different sides of some of the issues that we're facing in the industry at the moment, and also some of the positives. Like we've shared some of the positives as well, which is definitely what we're here to do. I want to leave with one final question, which is, if you, with what you know now, and with everything that you've seen, would you go back and still enter into the industry if you had your time again?
Such a good question, isn't it? Oh my gosh, I've got to think about that one. I honestly think I would. I mean, I got into the industry honestly because I wanted to travel and I wanted to go and live in different countries, but I didn't necessarily want to do it just as a backpacker, so I wanted to go with money. And being in the industry has afforded me to live in so many different places. I've lived in 3 different continents. I've worked, I cannot tell you how many different roles I've had in that time. I've made some of the best friends that are still my best friends, and they just happen to be in 4 corners of the world, but I can turn up in most countries nowadays and know there's someone I can call to go and stay with or find. So the industry has given me so much. Now, I gave the industry an awful lot. And
yeah, you did.
So much of my life, whatever. But, would I go back into it? Yeah. Would I go into it with a different mindset? Probably, and I would tackle some things differently. I probably would have taken more risks. I definitely would have pushed my leadership journey harder, and I would have taken jobs that I probably didn't, and jumped into opportunities quicker because, like we said, the confidence or the imposter bit, whatever, I said no. So yeah, I would have pushed myself a bit harder on some things, but yeah, I definitely would have gone back into the industry. I'm still so passionate about it. It drives me mad that, people say awful things about our industry, and I get there's awful things about our industry, but there's also amazing things, amazing people, amazing work that's going on. So I definitely would go back into it, with a little bit more wise thoughts, I think, but I would definitely do it.
Good, that's good to hear, and I think I would definitely back that. And I think the best thing about it is that you now provide a service which is there to encourage others to stay in the industry, and it is backed by real truth and heart that you would go back into it.
Yeah. I mean, I've always been like that. I don't think there's any point but not being honest about things, and I get that feedback from clients a lot, the passion I have for the industry, but also the honesty You know, the people need to hear. You know, I work with senior leaders, and very few people tell them the truth. You know, I'm the one that tells them the truth, and sometimes they don't like it. Sometimes they do, but they need to hear it. We all need to hear the truth every now and again.
I can vouch for that. You definitely tell me some hard truths most time that we speak, which is good. Well, thank you again so much for even flying over here to see us, and for being our first guest on the podcast. It's been a pleasure having you. And I really hope that you will be there to attend our next event and maybe even speak for us then.
You know. Well, thank you so much for having me. And of course I will be at the next event, and I'll come back in the podcast later on down the track once you've seen other people as well. But it's been brilliant. Lovely to talk to you.